Welcome to the Terrible Podcast with your hosts from SteelersDepot.com, where you can find all your latest and greatest Steelers news. It's Dave Bryan and Alex Kozora, always lit, talking Steelers.
And now, here's Dave and Alex.
Welcome to the Terrible Podcast, a special edition of the Terrible Podcast, Pittsburgh Steelers Training Camp 2025. I am Dave Bryan from SteelersDepot.com, and with me, as you would expect, fresh off of his first trip out to Latrobe, PA, Saint Vincent College for the first training camp practice of 2025, is the one, the only Alex Kozora. Alex, happy Thursday. Happy first day of training camp. How are you? How was the weather? Was it nice and uncomfortable just the way Mike Tomlin likes it?
It was. They say it's Christmas in July, and it really was for the first day of training camp. Getting back at it, I want to thank our entire team for all the work today and the first of 15 practices, and it was a really good start. Plenty, of course, to talk about, Dave.
Yeah, and this, of course, will be our first of several special editions of the Terrible Podcast. I think we normally end up, however many practices there are, we're probably one or two short of that because we don't usually do one after the Friday Night Lights practice. And sometimes, depending on weather or whatnot, there might be one that we're short on that way as well, too. But be prepared for a good, 13, 14 of these every night after Pittsburgh Steelers wrap up their training camp practices. Really looking forward to doing these with you, Alex. Like we do every year, I really learn a lot throughout these things. And look, at the top of the show here, we always have to acknowledge our sponsor who's back with us once again this off season. I don't know how many years in a row this is now. It's probably up into the double digits by now. I'm, of course, talking about Touring Plans. Our fine buddy Lynn Testa, who runs Touring Plans. Boy, if you got anything that you need to do with the upcoming trip for Disney, Universal, any of the Disney cruise lines, anything that you can think of related to Disney, you need to go to Touring Plans. They have a great website. They've got an app to go along with it. They can not only save you time with some of these lines, with the rides, they can save you money. It's just all encompassed, all in one site. So you've heard us, if you've listened to the Terrible Podcast special editions before, you've heard us talk about Lynn Testa. He's been kind enough to sponsor us all these years, and he is back again with us for 2025. So you can follow them on Twitter at Touring Plans. And as usual, you can go to touringplans.com and go there right now. Just bookmark the site so you know that you have it in your bookmark list for your next Disney trip or Disney associated type trip coming up. Anything else you'd like to add, Alex, as far as buddy Lynn Testa and Touring Plans?
No, well said. We appreciate Len supporting the site yet again. It just feels like part of training camp, blocking, tackling, McChickens, and Len Testa and Touring Plans. So they've been a very gracious and dedicated sponsor from the very beginning. Whenever I was going out there in the McLumina, and now she's in the big junkyard in the sky. But Len Testa, Touring Plans here to stay. So we appreciate their support. And as you said, anything Disney related, check out their website for more information.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. The second kind of announcement when it comes to this show, normally we do a Friday morning show, but we've got a lot going on, obviously, with the start of training camp and all. So we're going to try to cram kind of make this half a training camp recap episode, half of a Terrible Podcast edition as well, too. So we're going to run a little bit longer in this episode to try to get everything that we want to cover obviously recapping training camp, and then what we might talk about in the Friday episode. And then obviously we'll be back on Friday night, Saturday night, Sunday night, as far as recapping training camp practices. And then the next regular edition of the Terrible Podcast will be out Monday morning as well. And that's, I believe, the first off day that the Steelers have as far as training camp. So with that, we usually like to start off with some housekeeping, right, Alex? And who's practicing, who's not. Obviously, the Steelers opened up training camp with guard Isaac Sayamalo on the non-football injury list with a soft tissue injury. So I believe you had noted earlier in the afternoon. He was out there working on the side. There were a couple other people that minor bumps and bruises associated with, kind of early summer practices and all. I believe that was Cordell Patterson, who did not practice at all. And I think Jonnu Smith went through the early portion of kind of like individuals or whatnot, and then was in, I think, a hoodie and all for the team portion of practice. Mike Tomlin said after practice that, those guys are day to day, so we'll just have to keep an eye out on that. Obviously, you hate to see Jonnu Smith miss time at the start of training camp. And then Mike Tomlin also said had a couple of heat-related guys that they're keeping an eye on after this first practice, and that's probably not too surprising as well. He did not name any names there, so we're unfortunately, as we go through training camp, this list is going to grow and then shrink and then probably grow a little bit. And we always usually start these special editions of these podcasts up with talking about who's in, who's out. And I think Ryan McCollum as well, too. I'll let you talk a little bit about that, Alex.
Yeah, just to go over it, you hit on all the key points there. Jonnu Smith was limited, worked very early in practice. He did come down the stairs, second player down, hit the jugs machine, but did not work in teams. So we'll call him limited, but seemed okay overall, was on the field with teammates during the final huddle after the final horn sounded today. Isaac Seumalo, as you said, working on the side. Cordell Patterson, I didn't see him. He probably was down there somewhere, but he was not in uniform. Ryan McCollum also in that limited bucket. He was dressed. He worked through some stuff early, but did not participate in the team periods. He did some jogging on the side, so that seems to be minor as well. So as things stand one day in, things seem to be in pretty good shape. Some minor stuff, nothing appearing to be incredibly serious. Already seeing some half days for veterans like Cam Hayward, who probably practice half the day, and giving more reps for young guys behind him. So overall, decent place to start. We'll check on things tomorrow, of course.
All right. Who came down first? Who came down second? Who came down 23rd?
Peyton Wilson, the first man down, and that's no surprise. He did that all last camp, and so that trend continues. About a half hour before training camp, before practice started at 1:55 p.m. Eastern time. Jonnu Smith was second 2 minutes later, and then they all kind of tumbled out from there. Roman Wilson came down. He signed autograph for about 10 minutes, but I'm sure people want to care about what happened on the field. But everyone loves to hear that first man down, and that was Peyton Wilson.
All right. Anything else you'd like to cover as far as pre-practice type stuff, or shall we jump right in this thing?
Yeah, I think we should just jump into this thing, Dave.
All right. I always interested at the top of camp, especially when it comes to offensive line and combinations, and I think that's one of the several things that we talked about that we would go over here with who's running with what group. So let's start with the offensive line. Give us the pre-practice kind of line combinations, and then give us the line combinations once practice got underway and guys like Ryan McCollum not in running with those groups.
Yeah, there's already some moving and shaking and double dipping with, say, Malu on NFI and McCollum limited. So in the very early warm-ups, you can call it the on-air type stuff, install type of stuff, whatever you want to refer to it as. Not the team period. First team, Broderick Jones, Spencer Anderson, Zach Frazier, Mason McCormick, Troy Fautanu. That remained constant throughout practice, so there's no change there once they went 11 on 11. Second team, very early on, Calvin Anderson, Max Sharping, Ryan McCollum, Doug Nestor, and Dylan Cook. Now, when they went team period, McCollum subbed out, Sharping kicked over to center, Doug Nestor went to left guard, and Stephen Jones played second team right guard. Anderson, that's Calvin, and Dylan Cook still your tackles. And then third team, early on, Gareth Warren, Doug Nestor, Nick Broker, Aiden Williams, and Stephen Jones. I believe that also stayed constant throughout practice. And so you're getting Doug Nestor double dipping, playing left guard and right guard, Stephen Jones playing right guard and right tackle. And then who would that extra center be? And really two of them, because McCollum was not fully working. You're getting Max Sharping and Nick Broker being your centers behind Zach Frazier. Also, Mason McCormick did some snapping very, very early on before even Frazier came down to Aaron Rodgers. And so wonder if that's still a break glass in case of emergency type situation there for McCormick.
All right. Anything interesting about Nestor's a big boy, but I think we kind of had our questions, guard / tackle type thing. So it seems like they think of him more as a guard, right?
That's what it looks like right now. Now, again, guys will move around throughout training camp. Injuries can dictate things, but Nestor is beginning his career at guard. That's believed where he finished his West Virginia career after playing a lot of tackle. Stephen Jones is a big guy, too. He's a mountain of a man overall, and that tackle guard flexibility is interesting there for him.
What do you think about Sharping and Broker playing some center?
Yeah, like I said, I really didn't know who that third center would be, and now you need two extras because, like I said, McCollum wasn't working, so I didn't know who would get the nod there. Would it be Broker? I thought maybe Aiden Williams, but Sharping's a veteran. I think he has a center background. He's basically played up and down the line throughout his Northern Illinois career, and he's bounced around in the NFL, so I guess it does make sense overall for Sharping to get that work, and probably some more veteran guys too. Sharping a vet can probably handle center, the line calls a little bit more than, throwing a Nestor or Aiden Williams or somebody like that in there.
All right, and where did you say Aiden Williams was running in this? The third team
yeah.
right guard, right?
Yep, third team right guard.
Did we say in the I'm trying to remember in my 90 and 30, didn't he mainly play right guard? What wasn't that the expectations with him?
I don't remember. I think he was
remember.
playing more tackle in college, but he knew he was going to kick inside
Right.
at the NFL level because of a
That's
lack
right.
of length. So I think that's with the assumption he was going to play one of those guard spots.
All right. Interesting. I think that Nestor flipping sides within all this. So that's something to watch moving forward here, left and right guard. Okay. Obviously, they don't have the pads on and all like that. Any main takeaways from the offensive lineman in day one?
Yeah, not much from an evaluation standpoint, watching it live, and they're not in pads, and there's no competition period, no 1v1s. You can catch a little bit here and there, but not enough to really make any sort of evaluation, even to the smallest degree right now. So we'll check back tomorrow.
All right, let's where do you want to go? You want to talk a little bit about the tight ends and kind of the lines and who was working with what groups within that?
We can, but one theme of this, and this has really just become more and more of a constant as we do these training camps each year, Dave, is you get so many rotations. You don't often get any more of the clean first team, second team, third team, especially for a tight end heavy system and scheme like what Pittsburgh is running. So without Johnny Smith in there, Pat Frymuth, of course, was your number one. Darnell Washington, you can easily call your number two. And then from there, you're getting 12 personnel, you're getting multiple tight end sets in with different guys in the game. So it's really hard to probably give an order of a true depth chart. You can suss it out if one knows Pat Frymuth is ahead of Connor Hayward or JJ Galbraith, but these guys are going to mix and match a lot, and that's reflective of a lot of positions, receiver, DB, D-line, etc.
And DJ Thomas Jones working with the tight ends, not surprising.
Right. In individual periods, where do some of these guys go? And even though he's a fullback, at least listed on the team website, Thomas Jones working with the tight ends. I don't really think he played any fullback today. The one fullback snap I saw was Connor Hayward in a true old school I formation. Thomas Jones played some tight ends, some Y off, the things he did at Ole Miss in South Alabama. Unfortunate moment for him in 7-on-7, a pass from Skylar Thompson down the left seam. Tight window throw, but a good throw, hit Thomas Jones in the chest and bounced out and was picked by Quindell Johnson. So opportunities for a young guy like Thomas Jones, got to make those plays.
All right. Anything else to talk about the tight ends today on day one?
JJ Galbraith is interesting. I've talked him up quite a bit. More practice squad material in that lens than a guy that was probably going to make a serious case for the 53. Certainly built more like that receiver mold, a little slighter framed overall, a little bit shorter, but a really good athlete. And he moved well fluidly. There was one early play in team. It wasn't a downfield play, but a little boot to the right by Skylar Thompson, and nice hands catch by JJ Galbraith over his head. So just kind of seeing some of the fluidity and natural hands that Galbraith has.
All right. I believe one guy, as we move on to the running backs and the wide receivers here, that we were going to play Where's This Guy at game at Max Hurlman, undrafted free agent out of Notre Dame. Interesting. I think you noted he was working with the wide receivers group, right?
He was, despite wearing a number 34 that might suggest more running back work, and that's part of his background. He was working really, I would say, exclusively with the wide receivers today. He worked with them in the individual periods and was playing wide receiver in team. He's a guy that began his career, I think it was running back at Colgate, then moved to wide receiver, vice versa, then transferred up to Notre Dame, became a cornerback last year, and also getting work in the punt return lines. He was the Fighting Irish's primary punt returner last year, so can wear a lot of hats, but right now, receiver and returner for Max Hurlman.
All right, and that leaves the rest of the running backs obviously being Jalen Warren, Caleb Johnson, the rookie. Cordell Patterson was on this not working today. Trey Sermon and Kenneth Gainwell and Evan Hull. And obviously, Warren running with the ones. I would imagine Caleb got a little bit of work with the ones and the twos, and there was not much in the way of obviously illegal clips to come out on the Twitter machine. But I got to see a couple of things. I got to see some of that burst of Caleb Johnson, break off a run, and I was that I think it was 11-11, one of the periods there. Seemed like he had a pretty good practice overall for not no tackling or anything like that. And Mike Tomlin said after the practice was over that he really showed up in fine shape. Really seems to be conditioned, and that's going to allow him to take a lot of reps and get a lot of work throughout the summer if he stays healthy.
And he had a lot of reps today. Typically for running backs, and I don't want to overstate the practice for Caleb Johnson. You're not in pads, you can't tackle. It's two-hand touch or it's some thud tackling, and so these runs are often longer looking than they would be in reality. But you can certainly feel that burst with Caleb Johnson. He's a guy that on those zone runs he can plant and get upfield, and you just really kind of feel that difference even in an environment like this. And so that was the one thing I really took away from Johnson. But as Tomlin said, as you said, just being in condition to take those reps, with Cordell Patterson sitting out and Jalen Warren after every rep runs all the way to the end zone. So another running back has to come in while he trots back to the sideline. And so that's more reps for Caleb Johnson. He got a ton of work. I will disappoint. I don't have the running back reps charted out today, but if I had to take a pretty educated guess, I would say Caleb Johnson led that group. Now, Jalen Warren still ran first team, was still getting the initial, reps and carries and looks and snaps, but Caleb Johnson getting a ton of reps today.
All right. Let's see here. Shall we go? Gainwell. How
Yeah.
Gainwell was used.
Yeah, certainly Pittsburgh brought him in for his receiving chops and what he did against them in that Eagles game last season, those 3 third-down conversions, and they're going to lean on that receiving background pretty much immediately in that first team period. He was playing wide receiver, and he was split out, and he was running receiver routes. Now in the second team period, he ended up getting more running back work, but even in 7-on-7s, you're seeing this guy split out. So they really like his receiving skill set, his quickness, and they're going to treat him as a guy that can certainly be a very, very capable pass catcher.
All right. Anything else to add about the running backs, or did we cover it for today?
I think it covers it pretty good. You have Hull and Sermon behind, and a couple carries for those guys. Hull's kind of interesting. Can he be a third down type? A little bit of burst there with him, but a lot more to go in learning about those guys.
All right, let's go out to wide receiver now. Obviously, your top three, I think, when they open up in 11 personnel was DK Metcalf, Calvin Austin III, and Roman Wilson. And take us through the wide receivers, starting with those three.
Yeah, those are your top three guys, and in order: Metcalf, Austin, and then Wilson. And some of the 12 personnel, it was Metcalf and Calvin Austin getting that work, but those are kind of your top three receivers right now. No real notes on the individual play. Rodgers, Metcalf trying to work on that connection. I'm sure we'll talk about that a bit more whenever we discuss the quarterback situation. So I don't really have a whole lot of hard and fast takeaways in terms of performance, but just getting a lay of the land, which is really my intent, especially for day one, but really throughout these first 4 days. So whenever the pads come on next Tuesday and it really becomes true evaluation time, I'm focused on that, not about who's aligning where and running with which group. So just to kind of get that depth chart cemented, Metcalf, Austin, and Wilson, your top three.
You getting used to some of these new uniform numbers on some of these kids?
I'm just getting used to this brand new roster. I joked with Tim Rice, our photographer, today. I said, are we in Steelers training camp? Because I don't recognize half these guys. It's just been an off-season to change. And so it's been one of the most interesting starts to camp just on that alone. It truly feels brand new.
All right, let's go to the quarterback position. First snap, I guess 11-11. Aaron Rodgers over to the left side on a quick out to DK Metcalf, picked off by one Patrick Queen. Season's over. Thanks for coming. Thanks for playing. Right? Did you get a good look at that play, Rodgers? We'll talk a little bit in a minute about what he had to say after the practice, but talk about Aaron Rodgers' first day in training camp for the Pittsburgh Steelers.
That was going to be my joke. Season's over, Dave. We tried. It's a good year. We'll try it in 2026. It was, interception, which is an interesting way, notable way to start things. It was a great read and play by Patrick Queen. I assume that is out there on Twitter. I have not
It is.
scrolled through it. Okay. They're basically being live streamed at this point. For anyone asking, you're not technically allowed to take video of competition, team period, that kind of stuff. So I will not have that, but I know other people, fans will put that out there. But either way, yeah, great play there by Patrick Queen. And I would say overall in a vacuum, Rodgers' practice was pretty shaky. A couple of batted passes. I think was his next throw after the Queen interception was batted down. Trying to find that connection with DK Metcalf, couple of blitzes where he had to get the ball out. Rodgers did so. It's one practice. It's Aaron Rodgers. If this was a 4-string rookie, you might feel some type of way about it, but it's just one practice. Not going to panic, but yeah, was it a good practice today? No, it wasn't.
Yeah, he's still getting this timing and getting on the same page with these wide receivers, and both those guys, him and DK Metcalf, talked about it quite a bit with getting on the same page after practice. So that it's going to take a little bit of time. And I think DK said that they had the 2 sessions that they worked together out in UCLA. And then obviously Aaron brought the wide receivers out to Malibu for 1 session. So these guys are still learning each other. And Aaron didn't sound like Aaron did a lot during mandatory mini camp overall. I think Mike Thomas said mostly a observer there. So in other words, what you're saying, season's not over then when it comes to this. I know Aaron said, look, the ball's a little bit sweaty and he's going to have to get used to working in this heat. And he said he's going to throw interceptions during training camp, but he says, look, if you watch the games, I've been pretty good about not throwing interceptions, but he says he probably will throw more interceptions in camp moving forward, but he's also going to throw some touchdowns as well. So take us through anything else to add on Rodgers overall. I mean, I did see one of the quick slants to DK Metcalf. Thank God we seeing that. But it went off Metcalf's hands. But if you slow that thing down and still frame it, that ball wasn't on the money. That was going to be a tough catch. So it obviously shouldn't go in the books for a drop on DK Metcalf. It's just another sign that they got to get this timing down.
Yeah, that came in 7-on-7s, and they had missed an opportunity on a downfield throw in the first rep there. But as you said, it's timing, it's chemistry. You almost want to throw interceptions in training camp to kind of see what are the limits of what you can get away with and what your receivers are capable of. And as Rodgers said, rather throw them now than in the regular season. And he's been historically good. He has the lowest interception percentage in NFL history of anybody with more than 2,000 or so attempts. I think that is obviously going to get the headline, the interception, the not great day. I'm not even going to put the camp stats out there because of the panic it's going to have. I'm sure if you divvied up the numbers and tallied them up, it would look bad, but I don't really care about that on day one. I think some interesting things about Rodgers on day one. A lot of under center work, so very traditional Arthur Smith offense, bootlegs, play action, working under center instead of shotguns. There were some of the shotgun formations, obviously, but Aaron Rodgers will be working under center a fair amount this year, more than I'm sure last year and in seasons past. But then also beyond that, B, just some of the intangible things, the informal conversations early in practice, whenever it's Rodgers and Mason McCormick and they're snapping, they'd snap the ball, then have a pretty lengthy 30-second conversation, Rodgers pointing at something, probably talking about technique and footwork and those things to a second-year guy like Mason McCormick during that first offensive grouping where it was 11 offensive players on air. Rodgers huddles the group up and he's saying something to them and they're kind of laughing and then they get to call in. So, those are the things that matter more, the conversations, the one-on-one moments, even in stretch line, which, by the way, Rodgers goes through the full stretch line. Remember, Ben would never go through the stretch line. He'd go through the football instead. He's going through that. He's talking with the Marvin Leal. They're having a conversation as they're stretching, out and getting ready for practice. So, those are the things I think are really valuable, those conversations that'll become, talking points and teach moments that really make training camp. That matters more than a, random interception for a first throw.
I don't know if you saw it today, just kind of J.J. Watt went hellfire and brimstone on training camp stats on Twitter today. So, look, you have a method to your madness. You don't, you always try to say why and contextualize stuff, and you've been doing it for a long time. But I'm just prepping you that he did go hellfire and brimstone on training camp stats, and I'm sure somebody will remind you of that the first time that you post those. But
and I get the point, because if you use it as a cudgel to sit there and say, well, he was bad because the stats say he was bad, that's recklessly using it for narrative building. I use it as one tool of a tool belt for all players, not just one guy. I don't care about the stats in a vacuum as much as I do about the relativity. How is he doing compared to his peers, and historically, how does that compare? I think there's more value in that. We do the camp stats because we do the charting, the play-by-play, so you have the numbers there. Might as well try to put some quantifiable value on a practice, but we use it as one piece of the lens. There's the eye test, there's the context of it all. We're not beholden by the stats, and that's where I think we separate ourselves from others that want to use it just to drive a narrative, good or bad.
Right. All right. Good explanation there. Okay. The rest of the quarterbacks, Mason Rudolph sounds like he had a pretty decent afternoon for day one.
Yeah, I thought he showed touch on throws. There was a throw over the middle to Scotty Miller for probably a good 20 yards over the underneath zone linebackers, and 7-on-7 hitting Darnell Washington on a corner route, getting away from Cole Holcomb. So Rudolph number 2. Thompson and Howard are kind of splitting, you could say, third and fourth team reps. I'll have to kind of tally it back up in my charting and some of the very initial install, early pre-practice stuff. It was Thompson getting the work over Howard, but they were kind of rotating in those last couple of snaps to, I don't know, reps 10 through 12 on a team period. So, yeah, I think both those guys will get some chances to see you can kind of get the early separation on one another. But the other quarterbacks, though, were fine. I mean, it was pretty conservative today overall, with a couple of throws from Rudolph's side. It was a lot of play action boots and shallow crossers and just kind of taking a profit. So it wasn't too taxing, or quarterbacks really weren't trying to test the secondary today.
Real quick, about how many total snaps between because they had no 7 shots today, right?
Right.
They went into, I think you said they had 3 11-on-11 periods, and then 1 7-on-7 period, I believe. How many roughly total snaps was that? And then within that, just roughly how many did Will Howard take?
Well, it's almost always, I should say, 12 reps during team period. So 12 snaps there. So 36 over the 3 sessions. I would say that Howard and Thompson were splitting pretty equally. So it goes 4-4-4, basically first team, second team, third team. So Rodgers gets the first 4, Rudolph the next 4. Then you were splitting the last 2. So that's 2 snaps for every period. So 6, I would say, just doing the rough math on that. So probably 6 reps for the team period for each quarterback. And that does not include 7-on-7. I don't have that charted, but probably, they're going to get more reps there. But you're also throwing an individual and on-air type stuff. So you're getting your throws in right now for sure.
All right. Anything left to talk about with the quarterbacks?
I think that probably covers it pretty well. But yeah, a lot of stuff under center.
Exchanges, how were the exchanges today?
Good, except for one mishap. I think it was Sharping at center. It was Thompson under center, and I'm pretty sure that Sharping or somebody, maybe the guard, stepped on Thompson's foot because he fell backward. The ball popped out, and there was a whole scrum for it. So luckily, no broken toe situation like what's happening apparently up there in New York with Justin Fields, but that was the one botch exchange. There was also one snap that Rodgers wasn't ready for. I think it was snapped early. There was one snap slightly high. So a couple of small things, but you'll clean that up over camp.
What about false starts or anything like that?
Just one. I think it was on Darnell Washington. Last year was easy because they get pulled out. They'd have to run the lap. So it's easy to say, okay, this was the offender. They didn't do that in this rep. Maybe later on if it continues. But yeah, that was actually right before the botch exchange with Thompson. So it's kind of a whole mess. You had the false start, they reset, the bad snap, and it was kind of clown car from there. But other than that, it was pretty clean.
All right. Any overarching thoughts on the offense from day one?
It's hard to really give any sort of thoughts. It was pretty, you're practicing for a purpose, and today was a lot of boot stuff and play action and kind of that component of the offense. Caleb Johnson showed some burst. Rodgers wasn't great. The other quarterbacks I thought did well, but it's hard to really give an overall take on the offense one day in such a limited and low-key and even shorter environment. It's a pretty quick practice, that first one, and they'll practice longer starting tomorrow.
All right, let's flip over to the defensive side of football. Let's go to the defensive line, and more than anything, I want to talk about the line rotations within that. And of all the illegal clips that were out there on the Twitter machine today, I've got one player that I want to talk about, and I'm sure you know who that is. But take us through the line rotations.
Yeah, again, there's some mixing and matching there too, based on sub and 3-4 packages, and then Hayward kind of getting that half day. But in your starting nickel group, no surprise there. Keanu Benton, Cam Hayward in base. It was Derek Harmon at left defensive end, Benton at nose tackle, and then Hayward at right defensive end. From there, let me check my notes on second team base, and you're really getting into a lot of mixing and matching there. But I would say second team base at Dean Lowry, Daniel LaQuale at nose tackle, and Isaiah Loudermilk at right defensive end. Saw Y.A. Black playing nickel and right defensive end today. I'm trying to think how else I want to kind of phrase it. Dominique Davis, really, you could say, was working third team nose tackle. I'm going to try to pay some more attention to where Y.A. Black was. He getting nose tackle and DN snaps? I'm not sure. I know he was definitely getting some DN work, so I want to take the temperature of that a little bit more. And then Quale at nose is kind of interesting too, because he's played everything. He's moved up and down the line. So do they see him as a true nose tackle? Will he show some position flexibility? We'll wait and see.
All right, where was Sazy running in all this?
He was getting some nickel reps with, it might have been Y.A. Black, I think, getting some reps in there. So I need to probably go through that with a finer tooth comb tomorrow in terms of, who's getting what. But they're all mixing and matching. I mean, I can even give you some way down the depth chart type of reps. 3-4 base, probably third string, you can call it, was Jacob Slade and Dominic Davis and Logan Lee at right defensive end. So that just kind of gives you some groundwork to work off of.
All right, no pads on. Don't caution everybody to read too much into any of this, especially at the start of camp there. But and normally you either see the really good or the really bad clips at training camp there. And saw a couple where it looked like Derek Carmen had a couple of good reps. One of those where he got the arm up and batted down the pass of Aaron Rodgers, and I think another one where he made a move at the line and got into the backfield and probably would have had a tackle for a loss or something. But that's my analysis from all the way out here in Las Vegas. So you tell me about the day that Derek Harmon had.
No, I concur with those thoughts. I thought for that first day, and again, it is a first day. It's a long season. It's a long camp. It's a hopefully long career for Derek Harmon, but a good first day. I thought there was power on a bull rush on Fautanu early on. So he did bat down one of those passes because it's always tough to tell if it's him or somebody else. But I'm pretty sure he got his hand on at least one of the two bat downs from Rodgers and played a good run defense. So getting reps in base, some nickel reps as well. When Hayward got his half day, you were getting Benton and Harmon, kind of the grouping oftentimes with that first team nickel in. So yeah, I thought Harmon had a nice practice. I thought the top two rookies and Harmon and Johnson, you saw why drip, in a moment, just one practice, but you saw why they were the picks early on.
All right, outside linebackers. We know a lot about T.J. Watt. We know a lot about Alex Highsmith. We know a lot about Nick Herbig. Any of the whole switching side things or anything stick out when it comes to that? Then obviously Jack Sawyer, part of that group, and I believe he was at left outside linebacker.
He was second team left outside linebacker opposite Nick Herbig. Yeah, on TJ Watt, very early on, it was the first team period. I think maybe the second play even, you saw Watt. He was over the A-gap initially, stand-up linebacker, and then he kind of moved over to his left, probably more like he was not with his hand down, but kind of over the tackle or maybe three tech between right guard and right tackle, then dropped into coverage. So that was just one snippet I saw of Watt not being at that traditional left outside linebacker spot, as he's talked about and spoke about yesterday in that press conference to talk about his contract was, expect some different wrinkles and me to move around and do some different things that I maybe haven't done very frequently in the past. And so that was one instance you saw Watt, standing up over a gap and then dropping into coverage.
All right. How did the Lions, DeMarvin Leal, he's going to be an outside linebacker moving forward, you think, right?
That's where things are at right now. We heard in the spring some reporting from the beat guys that Leal was playing edge and he was exclusively an outside linebacker today. And so he was getting, I'd probably call it third team left outside linebacker. Again, you're still going to get a bit of mixing and matching. I think maybe Watt and Highsmith got a little bit of a break at the end, so that kind of bumps up blinds and reps for others. But, call it third team left outside linebacker for Leal, who I thought, ran hard, chased the ball. He's very athletic. somebody forced the fumble, either him or James Pierre, on Lance McCutcheon at the end of a play. I don't know who knocked it out, but I thought Leal ran hard of the ball, and so that's where they view him, outside linebacker. They like the athleticism, which he very much is athletic. It's a tough group to crack, obviously, but that's where he's playing right now.
All right, and the also Rans in that group, Echo Leota and Jeremiah Moon.
Yeah, you had Moon getting third team work, basically with Leal, and then Leota getting work, and then also Julius Wolshoff. And that new number, 45, before 48 last year, he's wearing 45 right now. Those guys were getting those fourth team edge reps, and not really a whole lot to note there. But again, it's tough until pads come on.
All right, inside linebacker group, Patrick Queen, Peyton Wilson. Peyton Wilson said earlier in the day he thinks he might be the best coverage linebacker in the NFL. You got Malik Harrison join, almost called him Malik Willis. Malik Harrison joining the group. Our buddy Cole Holcomb's back running around out there. I bet that was great to see.
It was. That's a big milestone for him. I know he came back and practiced late last year, but to be in training camp and to start fresh, I know he also worked in OTAs in the spring, but just on a personal note, to see Holcomb back out there for the first time since, his knee injury in 2023, it's been a long time coming, so that's a big box to check, and, we'll see if he gets any rest days or when the pads come on, if he gets limited at all, but he was not limited in my estimation, one bit today, and he was pretty active and around the ball, so that was good to see overall from him. So, I talked about earlier the deep bench and the rotations at different position groups. There's a pretty good and deep rotation at inside linebacker now. I think it was pretty clear that Peyton Wilson, Patrick Queen were your top two inside linebackers, not just in nickel, but also in base. And then I'm still trying to figure out division of labor of how they're filtering in Harrison and Holcomb and Mark Robinson and Carson Bruner. I mean, you're getting kind of some different pairings there. I saw some Harrison and Holcomb, and saw some, I think, Robinson and Bruner and Holcomb and Robinson. So you're really just mixing all those guys in. I don't know if there's a clear trend of base versus nickel. I think Harrison is basically playing in base because whenever they went to nickel during one rep today, I saw Harrison come off the field, but probably a little too early to tell on that. But it's a lot of guys there working, even Devin Harper, getting reps. And so it's a pretty interesting group.
All right, we'll learn definitely more about these inside linebackers once the pads go on, especially when we get into backs on backers and things of that nature there. All right, let's lump together. We got a lot to talk about, I think, when it comes to the secondary overall, and especially the usage of one Jalen Ramsey today.
Yeah, Jalen Ramsey going to be the talk here at cornerback today, Dave, and I'm sure this team has a whole host of plans how to use him. If you could kind of just give a 30,000-foot view of how it looks like he's going to be used based on his comments, some media reports, and then most importantly, what we saw today in Pittsburgh sub-packages. So their nickel packages, their, if you want to call it 2-4-5 or 4-5-2, depending on how you classify the edge guys, but your 5 DB package, you're going to see Ramsey working in the slot. That's how they came out today. And then more interesting, in your base 3-4, which is still used about 25 or 30% of the time on a season, a couple hundred snaps, you're going to see Ramsey play safety. They're going to keep those three corners on. You're going to have Porter and Slade play actually cornerback, and then you're going to have Ramsey play safety with Deshaun Elliott. So Thornhill is going to be that nickel guy that comes on, basically functioning as your fifth defensive back. So as Tomlin said yesterday, these guys are not coming off the field. Seems to be the plan in your nickel, Ramsey in the slot, and then in base, Ramsey playing safety. Again, they're going to move guys around. They're going to have wrinkles and packages, and injuries can affect things down the road, but that is the starting point for Jalen Ramsey in Pittsburgh.
All right, and there's no reason to think that won't continue if that's the way that they came out, right?
Yeah, it's just a question of how much do they add to it and how many wrinkles do they show, and game plans and matchups and injuries and how that impacts things down the road. I'm positive they've not shown their entire hand of Jalen Ramsey and his usage in this defense, but that is kind of the overall viewpoint of how he will be used, and expect him to blitz quite a bit. He was blitzing in team period. He's blitzing in 7-on-7. I think it was the second or third play of team period he blitzes, and he's free off the edge, and Rodgers has to hurry up and throw the football, not on the same page with Metcalf, and it was incomplete. So they have a big physical nickel corner that can do everything. He can cover, he can play the run, he can blitz, and they're going to utilize every inch of his talents.
That guy's going to be an integral part of this thing, isn't he?
Oh, yeah. I mean, no question. And obviously you can look at what he's listed at. What is he listed at on Steelers.com? Like 6'1",
Grown
2.
man. Grown,
Yeah.
grown ass man. Is that what I look at? Let me look at the Steelers roster here. Yep, grown ass man. That's what he's listed at.
Yeah, when you see him in person, it is kind of one of those,
They list him
wow.
at 6'1", 208
I mean, he's
on the
just every
media
bit of that.
side.
He's probably heavier than that.
Yeah, he's got to be he's got to be. Somebody needs to ask him how much he weighs. He got to be more than 208, right? He's got to be. I think even didn't Metcalf say something like he's 6'3" or something? Or
Well, I assume his height, whatever he was coming out of Florida State, I don't know what that was, but his height's. But I mean, he's a presence no matter what his actual height and weight is. And Pittsburgh has a bunch of big corners, and Corey Trice and Joey Porter Jr. has freaky long arms, and Slay's not a small guy either. But you see Ramsey out there, and it looks almost linebacker-like because these linebackers are barely weighing more than Jalen Ramsey does these days. The 220-pound linebackers are common in the NFL. So that's kind of the first thing that get off the bus. Presence is the good word for it, but obviously the guy can play too. So from a production standpoint, was he really targeted today? I don't know if I have that in my notes, but you're going to get a lot of chances going forward, and just kind of seeing they're going to use him versatility to the nth degree because he can wear a lot of hats.
All right, that leads that gives a little bit more credence into you only carrying three safeties on a 53-man roster, right?
Yeah, I mean, we'll see. Who knows what could happen? They could still add somebody. I think they're going to kind of have the group as is, though. Ramsey's going to play this much safety, and you have Thornhill behind. You're going to go out there and sign a Justin Simmons? I don't really get that sense they're in a hurry to do that. They at least want to take a look at this grouping and see how everyone does and kind of go from there. So, yeah, I think the plan is to, utilize Ramsey as a safety. Now, could somebody else make it for special teams or some depth? Quindell Johnson had a pick today.
That's my guy. He's on my 53-man roster.
Yeah, so, not counting anybody out, but they got flexibility and they're going to use it.
All right, talk about kind of the usage and the rotations of the rest of the cornerbacks and the safeties today.
Yeah, so first team corners are, of course, Porter and Slay and Ramsey. Second team on the outside, it's Eccles and Trice. I think Eccles left corner, I want to say, and Trice at right corner. I got to get a better look at second team slot because I only saw Beanie Bishop a little bit. I probably just missed him. I'm sure he got a fair amount of reps today, but I need to probably look for that more tomorrow. And then third team, you were getting some Cameron McCutcheon. You were getting some Kyler McMichael, Dante Kent in the slot as well. And so that's kind of it's probably a rough way to give the group. It's also James Pierre. Really was probably more McCutcheon and Pierre, and then McMichael getting a couple of reps intertwined, but that's probably a way to go down the depth chart with those guys.
All right, what about our buddy Sebastian Castro that we were both high on coming out of Iowa?
Yeah, he was working safety, and again, lines blur because what's second or third team with Thornhill playing in situational and sub packages, and so it's not that clean. Here's the first team, here's the second team, here's the third team. You're getting some mixing and matching, but he was getting reps. You probably call it third team-ish with Miles Killebrew most often, getting a little bit of slot work and some post-snap rotation. There was one play, I think it was 7-on-7, where Castro's down over slot, and then on the snap of the football, he rotates and plays that deep half safety in a too-high shell look. And so, I think his claim to fame, he's going to make this roster, is on special teams, but you're getting some slot safety work with him, which is really what his role was at Iowa, kind of playing that, I don't know what they call it there, star or, everyone kind of has a name for that nickel hybrid overhang spot, and that's what Castro can probably do at the NFL level.
All right, so the main takeaway really when it comes to the defensive side of the ball really is just confirmation of what Mike Tomlin said when this team reported it. Those three cornerbacks are going to be on the field a ton.
Yeah, I don't expect them to really come off too often, if at all, because those are your best corners, your best defensive backs. I mean, Elliott's a really good safety too. He's going to be on the field a ton and basically all the time as well. I don't think they ran dime today, so I don't know who would be the sixth defensive back. I would think Corey Trice, but you have Eccles, you have, who else, could get in the mix there? Castro and Johnson, etc. Pierre. I mean, you would think it's going to be Trice or Eccles, but we'll be watching for that going forward.
All right, I think Quindell Johnson had an interception off a tip or something today, right?
Yeah, that was the ball in 7-on-7. that hit off DJ Thomas Jones' chest, and it kind of bounced around and got tipped up. I think maybe Johnson batted it once and then was able to find the ball, corral it before it hit the ground. So nice splash play there. Porter almost had a Pickens 7-on-7. He read it. He jumped her out underneath to Connor Hayward, just dropped the pass. And so want to see this guy, take the ball away, get some interceptions up. Only has 2 in 2 years. But yeah, for Quindell Johnson, a nice pick today.
All right. Great picture of first day of the defense there set in my mind now, and we can kind of move forward from that. Anything else that you'd like to talk about defense? And obviously, probably not much to talk about on special teams other than who was in the lines, right?
Yeah, I can give you guys a rundown. They're really focusing more on punt returns. It was a punt focus day today. I didn't chart Johnston and Waitman. They punted, but they didn't do it in kind of the full with a rush period. So that's usually when I chart, but they seem to both punt, pretty well. Had some adventures with these returners trying to corral the ball, but early punt return lines, and this is in no particular order: Calvin Austin, Scotty Miller, Max Hurlman, Robert Woods, Keyshawn Williams, and Dante Ken. Some guys getting kick return work. Roman Wilson, James Pierre, Trey Sermon, Kenneth Gainwell, Caleb Johnson, Evan Hull, Beanie Bishop, and Deshaun Jameson. Should note in the punting period, you had Miles Killebrew as first team up back, which is his standard role, and Peyton Wilson and Jeremiah Moon were working as your left and right wings on the punt team.
All right. Anything that we missed here?
I think that covers it well. Chris Boswell, I don't think he kicked today. They were doing kicking on the side. They weren't dedicating a period to it. Ben Sauls was kicking. I don't think Boswell was, as he probably keeps that leg. I know that's your whole mantra, right? Is Boswell, do not kick until you get some sort of reward contract.
I wouldn't even bend over and pick up a ball. I'd have somebody do it for me just in case I sprain my taint or something.
Yeah.
Okay. Let's play. What was the best thing that you saw today?
I know it gets clowned on Twitter, but I love Patrick Queen making that splash play. All this talk about Aaron Rodgers, let's have the defense come in and make a play and pick off a pass. So I think that was just kind of a fun moment overall, and nobody should be sitting here fretting about Aaron Rodgers. Whatever your thoughts were on Aaron Rodgers yesterday should be your same thoughts today, good or bad, because one practice is not going to change that, or at least should not change that. But the rookies, I would say too, Derek Harmon, Caleb Johnson, just kind of getting a feel for their skill set, their athleticism, and why they were drafted so highly. Harmon in the first round, Johnson in the third round. I think Pittsburgh's calculation was physical playmakers, young guys, 21 years old, broke out in 2024, their final collegiate seasons, and there's a whole lot of growth there for those guys, and just two guys that are athletic and physical, and I think Pittsburgh really wants to build their team around that mindset.
All right. What was the most surprising thing you saw today? And it can be from the moment you showed up to the moment you left.
I don't know if there was one thing that was surprising, in part because I really try to truly go in with a clean slate of just take whatever happens for what it is and use it to learn and to note, and not necessarily going with a preconceived notion of I'm going to expect X, Y, or Z. I'm trying to give you a decent answer, though. I don't really know.
You said something about the stretch line or something, didn't you? Did I pick up on something, a different stretch line or something?
Yeah, it's very minor. It's the nerdiness of camp. They're going the other way. They're now stretching across the width of the field instead of the length of the field. Why they're doing that, who knows? There's probably some reason behind it. Makes for better photos for Tim. That was our conversation today. The only thing was, whenever I was walking in the camp, I saw Pat Meyer, the O-line coach, was walking up to the facility with all the fans, and nobody recognized Pat Meyer. I was too far away to say hello to him, but probably a good thing, because Pat Meyer doesn't have a whole lot of friends in Steelers Nation, but that was kind of interesting. But I mean, overall, anything surprising? I maybe give you an answer a little bit later on, but there really wasn't anything that's gonna shock you.
All right. All right. I think that wraps up the training camp recap portion of the first day of training camp 2025. We can sort of transition, I guess, into things maybe people have said and kind of turn this into a little bit of a terrible podcast episode.
Yeah, I know players spoke today. Did they speak before practice too, or just after practice day?
No, there was several of them that came in before practice, and then obviously you had several that came in afterwards. I thought it was funny to hear Aaron Rodgers talk about DK Metcalf evidently is his dorm roommate there, and he was he kind of didn't know what to expect or whether or not he'd have a roommate, I guess. And then I guess they kind of surprised each other, and Aaron Rodgers talked about how he had obviously they had worked out of colleges when he was with the Packers, and so he was kind of used to that kind of setting there. And more than anything, the funniest thing was he was glad he was not roomed with an offensive lineman. He's glad that he's roomed with somebody that cares about their hygiene and all like that. So that was a funny quip that he had there. There was a lot of talk about obviously the chemistry stuff and the working in the heat in the middle of the day, which I don't think Aaron's a big fan of, but he did mention that stresses people, and that's one of the things that Mike Tomlin always hits on, and why he likes it, because it really stresses players to see what kind of conditioning they are in and all like that. DK Metcalf, I'm trying to think if there's anything super notable that he had to say. Mike Tomlin actually spoke for about 4 minutes or so, I think, today, and reiterated that, keep your cameras rolling as far as guys moving around in that secondary there. Talked about, we already hit on Caleb Johnson, and he was being impressed with the conditioning there. He obviously wouldn't give too much more than that when asked how this player or that player did. I'm trying to think of some of these other guys that talked. Joey Porter Jr., obviously elated to have guys like Jalen Ramsey on the team that can learn that he can learn from, and really thinks that secondary is going to be strong. Oh, trying to think there was anything else that was really notable.
Yeah, I know Joey Porter Jr. made a comment about kind of the nightmare secondary that Pittsburgh's trying to create, a Ramsey and Slay and Porter. And you hear Tomlin yesterday talk about, we can go man to man against any team in football. So this is a team that feels very confident about the secondary that they're building, and rightfully so. They've had some big time investments, especially at cornerback. It is a much better, much deeper, and stronger group than last season. So I know Pittsburgh's kind of building some of their defensive improvements on really having a top trio of quarterbacks in the NFL.
Yeah, I'm trying to scroll through here to see if there's anything else that I missed here. We hit on DeMarvin Lau. Peyton Wilson focused on communication at training camp, which is obviously a good thing, especially how this unit had seemingly some problems at communications at times at the inside linebacker position last year. Cam Hayward says, they need to be more than just paper champions. Kind of status quo. Keeanu Benton wants to finish more plays in year 3, and that's something that we talked about after his first 2 seasons. Now that he's obviously in past, he's been in the backfield quite a few times, but what does he have? 2.5 sacks or something at this point, and that's one thing that Carl Dunbar has said is look, this guy could probably easily have 8, 9, 10 sacks probably at this stage of his career, and he doesn't. So he's got Benton knows that he's got to work on those. Said last year was subpar, and this year will be a better year for him. Obviously, we hope that's the case with him. Who else had anything interesting to say here as I scroll down here? Will Howard had a lot of praise for Aaron Rodgers, and Rodgers was asked about Will Howard as well too, and said, he's willing to help Will Howard however he needs it. And, so far he seems to be asking all the right questions and all, but he's not going to, this is kind of reiterating what Aaron had said, I think around mandatory minicamp time, that he's not going to overstep his bounds, but if these guys definitely have questions, he's going to definitely answer them for them and be as much a big a help as he can for those guys. Peyton Wilson, as we covered earlier, said he's thinks he's one of the better cover linebackers in the world. Trying to think what else.
How many, to go back to Benton, what's a reasonable number of sacks to expect from him? Because you're right, he's left so much meat on the bone. 2 sacks in 2 years, didn't get his first sack last season until week 18 against the Bengals. He's gotten a lot of pressures. He's athletic. There's pass rush tools there. What's a number that he should shoot for in year number 3?
I remember ahead of last year thinking, could we see a guy like Benton get 5.5 sacks? I think maybe, obviously that was way too rich for last year. You want to, sacks obviously aren't the end all do all. I just want to see him show up more, especially in pass rush situations beyond, say, the first quarter. It seemed like when you turned the all 22 on with him, it didn't take long before you saw that that club swim or him get a key pressure, or a hit, or something like that early in the game. It seemed like you saw less of that as games went on. So I think, just being more consistent throughout a game overall, especially when he is in those pass rush situations, instead of just being, let's say, a first quarter or first two series guy. I think 3 or 4. I mean, if he's, we're not talking about moving the needle much, but I mean, I think he definitely could, 3, 4, 5 sacks, should be could be in the cards for him in 2025.
I get your point. Sacks aren't everything, but isn't there at some point a bottom line of if you're a pass rusher and athletic and he is both of those things, you have to put up sack production, even in an era, and really especially in an era where quarterbacks, pressure isn't. There's a big debate. What matters more, Dave, pressure or sacks? Where do you kind of come in on that? I mean, I know sacks obviously matter more, but
Down
what is the
distance,
value?
a lot of things. Look, anything that produces a negative play, whether it be an interception or or a sack, or an interception or anything like that. Those are obviously prime. Forcing a ball out, what have you, and obviously you get into run defense there. I mean, consistent pressure can obviously add up over again. Here's the thing. You've got this defensive front now. We're talking about a unit that had under 50 sacks. These sacks have got to come from somewhere, right? So if somebody's got to be totaling these things when TJ Watt and Cam Hayward and say Alex Heisman aren't, right? Those were that's what takes you from 40 to over 50.
Yeah, I Cam Hayward just can't do it all every single year, and I had the stat, and I'll repeat it a couple more times, I'm sure. Hayward had 8 sacks last year. The rest of the D-line combined had 4.5, and that's just not good enough. That's an imbalance. That's why you release an Ogunjobi, why you draft Derek Harmon, and why you're counting on Benton to have more than just 1 sack, even if the pressures are there. So I still think expecting 5 for him is reasonable because I think he's capable of doing it, just needs to actually go out there and do it. And yeah, you can get a lot of pressures, but with the mobility of quarterbacks and their escapability, pressures may not always have that value anymore because quarterbacks can escape and extend the play, and you're not going after Peyton Manning, who's a sitting duck in the pocket. So I think, you got to have the bar high for Benton because the tools are there. It's got to come together at some point, and it's got to come together this season.
Would you agree, more of an early game guy?
Oh, yeah, I did that study last year on that club over because it is so potent, but once a lineman sees it once, he's able to sit on that because Benton has still not really developed a second move. You saw some flashes last summer of a bull rush and some other moves, but it's really just a one move. It's club over, it's to his right, the offensive lineman's left, and that's what he's got. It's a great, potent move, but it has diminishing returns, and the study I did at the bye week last year illustrated that. So he's got to have at least a second move, whether that's going the other way, which I assume he's not as comfortable and as strong doing it, or a bull rush or something than just that club over. Because everyone knows if you're game planning for this guy, if you're an offensive lineman or offensive line coach, you know exactly what his go-to is going to be. And you got to be able to do more than just one thing to consistently rush the passer and win in that format.
Yeah, and look, I mean, he needs to be a little bit stouter against the run too.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, he's not going to be that traditional plugger, but he can certainly be more disruptive up the field and do a better job anchoring and taking on double teams.
All right. I'm trying to see what else there is to talk about here, Alex.
Justin Fields, that's what a dislocated big toe. Is that the word?
Not a big toe. They said it wasn't a big toe, but it's something on the right foot, and had everybody obviously up in arms. And look, I mean, you use the word carted off and everybody freaks out, but they're not going to let during training camp. These guys aren't going to walk all that distance, however long distance it is and all like that. But I mean, obviously it was concern when he went down, and people were calling it lower leg injury at first. And immediately after practice, Aaron Glenn said it was a toe injury, and I think the Jets officially released something on their Twitter feed saying it's a dislocated toe. Was supposed to get more tests, and they don't know how long he's going to be out. I think the early consensus reporting is that by week 1, he's nothing is to suggest that he's in danger of missing week 1, but if this is a dislocated toe, how long is this going to keep Justin Fields sidelined for a new team?
Mhm.
Probably new things. You got to get on. We talked about timing and getting on the same page with receivers and all like that. I mean, you're really counting on that guy taking a lot of reps, not only during training camp and the preseason. So that could end up, depending on how long he's sidelined, impacting how ready, how ready and how good that offense might be right out of the chute there. So it's definitely something to monitor with Justin Fields going forward. It doesn't sound like he's going to release practice for the next couple of days, and heck, this thing, you know how those things can go. I mean,
Yep.
this could turn into a week, 2 weeks. This could turn into, who knows, him missing all the preseason with this, right? So, who they got? Tyrod Taylor, I think, back there, and I
Mhm.
think Aaron Glenn went out of his way while talking about saying, "Look, Tyrod Taylor's been in this league. What do you say, 13? Tyrod Taylor's been around a long time." He just made sure to emphasize that he knows how to lead. He's been in this league a long time, and I almost kind of wonder if maybe Aaron Glenn's expected to have to see a lot of Tyrod Taylor for the next couple of weeks in training camp.
Yeah, we're talking about this not just because it's an ex-Steeler like Justin Fields, but it's your week 1 opponent, and so there's
Mhm.
already uncertainty about who the Jets will be starting, and as you aptly pointed out, you wanna get reps with your new team and new system, and that could all be lost, and yeah, they're saying it seems like he avoided a serious injury, which is good. He'll be back for the regular season or thereabouts, but I wouldn't be surprised if he misses a lot of training camp. They're calling it day to day right now, but that's flowery language in the NFL. It's kind of like upper body injury in hockey. So I wouldn't be surprised if he missed a fair amount of the summer, which could certainly have an impact on the start of the season.
Well, we've seen Mike Tomlin call people day to day and them not practice for like 8 days, right?
Right, especially in training camp, we want to be cautious and not rush things. Look at Russell Wilson last year and how long of a process that was for him to get full in that initial calf tweak. So, yeah. Anyone ask Aaron Rodgers about pushing a sled today? He could ask
I
about
don't
that.
know. No,
No.
I listened to the whole thing. Nothing along those lines.
All right. I'm going to assume he did not. God help us if he did.
He did say
Um,
that he arrived Tuesday night, and I think only the rook. It was only him and some rookies or whatnot. And he said he looks forward to, spending time, after, and getting to know these guys, obviously. And I think one thing that DK Metcalf said that stuck out to me is, look, they're in the same room, and that they can obviously talk more about things that they are seeing or it saw during practice, outside of maybe the short conversations that they have on field during practice, and even things that might get covered in the meetings, in the offensive meetings and all like that. So I mean, it really is good, and this was no accident. Obviously, Mike Tomlin put those two together, I think, for a reason, and those two will spend a lot of time because look, they got it. They've worked together some already this summer and all, but it wasn't a lot. They really got to get to know each other a lot more, and know what the other one's thinking, and where's this route going to get broken off at, if see this cover, there's a lot of those things that we just, well deep inside the game, that we just don't talk about enough, that are integral for quarterback wide receiver relationships. And I think it's good that those two are rooming together, and Aaron Rodgers seems to be all bought. I don't know how many times you're going to see him in front of the media like you saw today. And how long was that press conference? 7 minutes, 35 seconds. I don't think you're going to see a lot of these Aaron. In other words, it's not going to happen after every practice, and
mhm.
you might you get him once a week, and then obviously after a preseason game, I think that's a potential there. But he obviously didn't meet the media when he arrived, at Saint Vincent College. So came out there and got that first one out of the way. But I don't think you're going to see a lot of Aaron Rodgers press conferences throughout this.
No, but you're gonna hear from him, and will it be on McAfee still? Probably not when he's at camp, I'm gonna guess, but after that, we'll see. But yeah, and that's why Pittsburgh goes away. And I know DK Metcalf talked about that. I think Rodgers discussed it a little bit, at least as well, about the destination camps. And most teams don't do that, where they stay at home and everyone practices and they're in their city and they go home and sleep in their own beds and they come back the next day. Different here, obviously. St. Vincent, you're together all the time. It is, you're literally in dorm rooms, and you're in a college lifestyle. So that's the allure of Latrobe, of St. Vincent, why Pittsburgh and why Mike Tomlin wants to go back to this place. And they believe there's a benefit that's greater than just X's and O's. There's a team bonding aspect this team, I think very much feels. And with how many new people are on this roster, these guys have to really work together. And the more time they spend together, hopefully the better off they'll be.
Johnny Smith was asked about, Arthur reuniting, obviously, with Arthur Smith, and he said, yeah, he's been a part of the story of my career and instrumental in his journey. So, just looking forward to getting back and working with Arthur Smith again. He's obviously happy about that. Was asked about if he thinks him and Pat Freiermuth could be the best tight end duo in the NFL. He says you got to prove it. You got to prove it more than just on paper. So, that was obviously his message within that. Don't know what else I didn't see too much other that he had to say, obviously learning to work with Aaron Rodgers, those kind of things, and trying to see if there's anything.
The fact he was speaking to the media today is a good sign. Whatever injury he
Mm-hmm.
has to be minor, otherwise he would not be speaking with the media.
Yeah, I'm trying to see when that happened, because this, I think, came out after you and I got on here. So I'm trying to read through the transcript overall here. But he spoke for about 5 minutes or so, I guess.
Yeah, so we'll hear from different people each day. Hopefully hear from some of the rookies soon, kind of get their take on what the training camp experience has been like, and be out there tomorrow, Saturday, and Sunday, all non-padded practices. So it's a similar situation. The real evaluation begins Tuesday when the team comes back after their off day, put the pads on, backs on backers, real competition periods to really kick things into high gear.
All right, anything else you want to cover as far as the Terrible Podcast portion?
I think that's it overall. I'm trying to think about any other stuff that came across. Omar Khan, did he speak today earlier?
He did during Steelers Live.
Anything there?
I didn't get to see or watch that one yet. I don't know if he said anything. He don't tell you a lot anyway.
Right.
So
he just spoke yesterday.
Yeah, I haven't covered that overall. I don't even know if there was anything worth writing up that the guys covered within that.
Let me check really quickly on this site if anything's popping up. Not seeing anything, so he probably didn't say a whole lot that wasn't already covered during his presser yesterday, which we covered in the Wednesday show.
All right. Okay, so I guess with that, we'll go ahead and put a wrap on this one. How long did we go in this one, Alex?
Today was an hour and almost 10 minutes.
All right. So, look, moving forward with this, as I mentioned at the top of the show, when we get to the special edition podcast, we're going to try to keep them, 35, 38 minutes in general. We'll run through the position groups and, obviously go through anything notable that happened in, 7 shots, 7 on 7, 11 on 11s type stuff, and start giving more of a lay of the land and depth charts and who's running where, all the kind of standard fare that goes along with that. So we, at the top of the show, we knew this one would run a little bit longer, A, because it's the first training camp practice, and B, we turned it into kind of a half of a terrible podcast show as well, too. So, Alex, you'll be back out there at Saint Vincent on Friday. What's the weather supposed to be like? Do you know?
Looks like there's a chance for the first rain practice. A little dicey right now, so we shall see, but wouldn't be surprised if the first shower of camp came through.
All right, your training camp recap went up at about what time? Should that be about the time people should look at them on the site?
Went up at 7 p.m. today, and future ones are almost certainly going to be later because that first practice is always the shortest. It's only the 3 team periods. You don't have the pads. We don't have some of the competition periods, O-line, D-line, that kind of stuff. So future ones probably pushing that back at least an hour to probably 8 p.m. or so. But they'll be up, and just stay by the site. And if you have the app, you can look there. If you get notifications on Twitter, you can see them whenever they pop up in Dave and the Depot feed. But yeah, probably later on going forward.
All right. And usually about 15, 20 minutes after that thing posts is when we hop on here and do the special editions of the Terrible Podcast. And those will probably be out a little bit later. We are wrapping this up at almost 8:30 Eastern time on Thursday, July 24th. So within that, Alex, great job today. I've already learned a lot. Already. I look forward to learning a lot more from you moving forward into training camp as well, too. So until tomorrow night, Friday night As always, well, let me run through the spiel here. You can follow me on Twitter /X at Steelers Depot. Follow Alex at Alex_Kozora. Follow the show at Terrible Podcast. Email the show, theterriblepodcast@gmail.com. Like what we do, want to donate, SteelersDepot.com. Hit the donate button. Also got an ad-free version of the site. You can find that on SteelersDepot.com as well. So until Friday night, as always, thanks for listening to the Terrible Podcast, a special edition of the Terrible Podcast, Pittsburgh Steelers Training Camp 2025 with Dave and Alex.